Okay, so welcome back to Dark Souls. This is probably going to be a relatively short one, but I'm going to try to at least get through the basics of character progression and what you can do at the bonfire, and maybe explore a little bit of Firelink Shrine and talk about what you can already find out about the world just from walking around this place. There's a guy over there that I will talk to, but first, you'll notice that we now have significantly more options at the bonfire. The attune magic option still isn't that useful to us. That will be useful once we actually get more spells to use. We can now level up. We can also reverse Halloween and Kindle. Now, reversing Halloween and Kindling are interconnected because you have to do the first one, reversing, to Kindle, and both of them require what's called soft humanity, or the player base refers to it as soft humanity. So if I look in my items, I have, oh wait, no, I do not have consumable humanity items, but I will in a moment. But if I view my status, um, you'll notice if I hit the back button, I can actually highlight the individual stats and see descriptions on what they mean. And if you don't want to hear me talk through all of this, this is your way to find out about this stuff. And at the bottom of my core stats here, so this first column is kind of my core stats, and then the other two columns are derived stats that come from these and from the equipment I've got on. So at the bottom, I have humanity, which is an actual stat, and humanity is kind of like souls in that it's something that I will acquire over time and lose on death, and can then retrieve. Right now, I have none of that. In order to become human, I need to use one of my humanity, and in order to kindle, I need to use one humanity. So you can also see in the top left, next to my health and my stamina, there's a 0 there. That is my humanity counter. So if I... Why is my mouse on my screen? There we go. So if I rest again, so I reverse Halloween by spending one humanity, and that both lets me kindle my bonfire and is basically me opting into the multiplayer. I will explain a bit more about the multiplayer later on. So we're going to ignore those two for now. The next important one is leveling up. Now, I mentioned before you can hit the back button for an explanation of all of these stats. I'm not going to go through them all right now. But as you probably know, exploration is one of the core appeals of this game. It's actually a lot more significant than a lot of people tend to say, because they tend to focus on the combat. And it's not just exploring the world and finding out what's there to find and seeing interesting level design and challenges, it's also exploring the various mechanics of the game. So exploring the mechanics it's actually intended that you discover mechanics over time, but a lot of them are somewhat obtuse and hard to understand even if you go through all of these explanations. So I am going to give a bit of help here. So we now have enough souls to progress our character. So if I hit to the right here on the D-pad, you'll notice that will increase my vitality stat and will also take away from my souls and increase my level. So you'll also notice that the number of souls required to level up, level, souls I have, souls required to level, is going to go up every time I tick that up. And to actually accept the changes, I need to go down here and hit A. The game will also highlight in blue all of the derived statistics that are going to change when I level this stat up. So just very quickly, because the derived statistics do have an effect on which stat you're going to level, I'm just going to pop out this screen real quick, go to my actual stats, hit the explanation button. So basically what you need to know about these stats, obviously your hit points, if they go down to 0 you die, stamina, which you use for most actions that aren't just jogging around. Your equip load is a rather important one. This determines at what point you will reach various thresholds of having a certain weight, and those thresholds will determine how fast you roll, how many invincibility frames your roll gets, how fast you run, and how fast your stamina recovers. So you always want to keep this below what your equip load is. You can raise it above your equip load, and there are some builds that can deal with that, but in general it's a very bad idea. However, if you have it below half of what your equip load, the number on the right of that slash is, which I do right now, you'll be lightweight, which means you'll roll faster and farther and have a lot more invincibility frames and recover stamina faster. So these are kind of major core stats right here. Then these stats are just the damage, the basic damage that your weapons in your right and left hands deal, which obviously will change based on what you have equipped there. You'll notice I don't actually have weapons equipped in my left hand, but I still have stats for this. That is because shields and spell catalysts are treated the same as weapons in this system, even though they're not really effective. Next, all of this is your defense stats. These generally, when it comes to leveling, something that raises one of them will raise all of them, and they always go up when you level up. Quick little note, your physical defense, your basic physical defense, is often not as important as your strike defense, slash defense, and thrust defense, because most physical attacks fall into one of those three categories and are affected by that instead of your basic physical defense. And then over here, I would not worry about any of these stats right now, but these are basically your resistances to certain negative things that can happen to you. Bleed, poison, and curse being status effects, and poise being essentially resistance to getting knocked down or stunned by enemy attacks. We'll cover that more later. And then item discovery is just a modifier to how likely enemies are to drop items. And attunement slots are slots that you use to basically equip spells to, so that you can use them. So the important ones here really are going to be our HP, stamina, and equip load, the damage on our weapons, and our defenses. So going back to leveling. Now, just quickly going over the stats. So, Vitality just increases your HP. It's always a good idea to put points into this no matter what build you are. So, I'm going to be putting barely any points into this because I'm crazy like that, and I like to play risky. Attunement. The higher your attunement is, the more attunement slots you have, but it's not 1-to-1. It's, I believe, at 10 attunement, 12 attunement, 14, and 19 you get new slots, and after that it's not really worth it. Endurance. Endurance is a stat that in later games is going to get split into multiple different ones because it's just so powerful. So this will determine our equipment load, which is, of course, very important. It allows us to do a lot of things if we've got a high equip load or if we don't care about being lightweight. It also increases our stamina, and the resistance to bleeding doesn't really matter that much. But the important thing is this increases equip load and stamina, which is something that any build will benefit from. Right. Okay, so strength. So just skipping to resistance. Resistance increases your defenses and resistances more than leveling up normally does. However, I would never put any points into this. It's pretty much useless as a stat, given that all of the others are actually useful to you. Alright, so then, strength, dexterity, intelligence, and faith are the last four. Humanity, you can't actually level up. All four of these stats are weapon scaling stats. What that means is that these are stats which certain weapons will require you to have a certain level in order to be able to wield them effectively. You can still equip them, but they're basically useless. And additionally, the damage that weapons do or the strength of your spells will scale up in relationship to these stats, and how much it scales to different stats will be determined in the stats for the weapon itself. So strength obviously tends to be bigger and heavier weapons. Dexterity tends to be faster weapons or weapons which require finesse. Intelligence is for spellcasting sorceries. Yeah, sorceries, that's the term. I sometimes get my terms for different magic systems mixed up. And then faith is for miracles. And intelligence and faith do have some melee weapons that require and scale with them, but not many. Strength and dexterity are your main melee ones. So, without getting into all the details, just quickly, if you're not sure what to invest points into, it's okay if you waste a few points in something you don't really need. That's fine. When in doubt, endurance and vitality are always good options, and it's good to get your endurance up fairly quickly. As far as what you should build if you're a newcomer, I would recommend, actually, if you're brand new to the game, you do what is called a quality build. Some people might disagree with me on this, feel free to. A quality build is basically where you have a balance of strength and dexterity. The reason I'm recommending this is twofold. One is that it will let you use and adapt to a much wider variety of weapons. And the second is... I just blanked on the second. So it'll let you use and get used to a wide variety of weapons so you can experiment with what you actually want to use. It will also... It's also good because, as I mentioned before, being spell casting focused when you're new generally isn't great. One alternate path that I would say would be decent is if you go strength and faith. Essentially, you can make a build that either invests heavily into one of these stats or invests a fair amount into two of these stats. And no matter what you're doing, something to keep in mind is pretty much every form of progression in this game follows the law of diminishing returns on investment. So you'll notice that obviously the soul cost of leveling goes up as I level, and the rate at which that increases is going to get faster and faster the more I do this. That's one way of establishing diminishing returns. The other is that the benefits you get for increasing your various stats, especially the ones that are weapon scaling stats, will gradually fall off as you level them up. to the point that I believe most of the weapon scaling stats become essentially useless once you go past 40 in any of them. And often you're going to want to stop earlier. However, anything that is below 20, you're probably not going to suffer too much if you raise it. So when you're first starting off, I would recommend raising endurance and vitality quite a bit, and choosing one of these stats, probably strength or dexterity, I would usually say strength, to raise a bit more so you'll be able to do more weapons and do a bit more damage. I'll cover weapon scaling and details on builds later. So for now, I'll raise my endurance by 1 and my strength by 2. And that will be that for now. Yes, confirm. Okay, so what was I going to do next? Right, I am going to be talking to people and exploring the... Oh, right, I forgot about those Will Halo things. I almost never play a Miracle Caster, so I'm pretty sure that these Will Halos are a multiplayer thing. They're one of the various obscure things, and that they boost certain spellcasting stuff. But I could be, and it just disappeared. I could be wrong on that. Alright, so do I have time to actually go around Firelink Shrine right now? So 2 people to talk to. Yeah, okay. Oh, no, I don't. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut the stream off early. So next time that we do this, we're going to be actually going around Firelink Shrine, exploring, and I'll be talking about both the narrative and the level design aspects of this initial area, as well as possibly talking a little bit more about how combat works. So I'll see you then. Should be tomorrow. Sign off for now.